I think that we need to modernize our government. I think we're so behind the times. Like, I was even thinking this today, that when I was in 5th grade, I used a floppy disk. Now I teach 5th graders how to code and how to build, STEM projects using motors and all these different things, right? So we have to keep up with the time. And so an idea that I had to reconcile this is a Bitcoin caucus. What we saw with that amendment that happened was a lack of understanding and them voting on something that they didn't even know anything about. And that's not okay.
Today I'm sitting with Aarika Rhodes, who is a U.S. Congressional Candidate for the 30th District of California, and she is a Bitcoiner. Aarika devoted her life to children and education. In 2013, she received the Teacher of the Year Award from the Los Angeles Clippers for her achievement in constructing an effective science curriculum. She was also previously published in the Journal of Multicultural Education for an article that she co-authored. Aarika is running on her campaign for academic inequalities, low-income communities, reforms for the U.S. criminal justice system, small business, and financial reforms, including a pro-Bitcoin stance. She's up against incumbent Brad Sherman, who opposes publicly Bitcoin and wants to ban it. Today, we'll learn about Aarika, her background, and what led her to running for Congress, and her views on Bitcoin. So with that said, let's dive in with Aarika Rhodes. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you like and comment below. And to find future episodes in your feed and push notifications, make sure you subscribe. And if you click the little bell, you'll get every new episode as it's released. Thanks again for watching. Aarika, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the first question I ask everybody who comes on this show is you got to tell me who you're in your top 5. Your top 5 people that you're communicating with the most these days, more professionally than personal. So who's in your top 5?
My mom and dad are absolutely, because they're really good hype people. My campaign managers, so they have 2. And then I'm at a tie between my really good friend, Roberto Blake, who's actually a YouTuber, huge Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
And my former co-worker of mine, that's a teacher. I talk to him all the time about policy.
Yeah, I love that question because it tells you a little bit about the people you're talking to, right? I love that your parents are in that. That's absolutely adorable. It's great because they are the people. The show I have is docents, and docents I define as people that influence, inspire, and guide others. And who's better to be a docent than somebody than their parents, right?
Right.
So why don't we go back though, and we'll talk about the early years. Just tell us where you grew up. Tell us about your socioeconomic background, what your parents kind of did for a living, and just a little about who Aarika was as a kid.
Yeah, so I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, born and raised, and my dad is actually a former UFC fighter.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And my mom is an entrepreneur and, grew up, middle class family. My parents are very, very big into values. My mom's German and Chinese. She speaks German fluently. My dad's African American, so I'm biracial. And I think for the most part, I had a decent childhood. I ended up moving to Los Angeles when I was like 20, 21, and I've been here ever since. I've lived in the Valley since my whole adult life, pretty much. And that's a little bit about where I'm from.
So I want to jump right into it because we have a short interview today. We have to have a hard stop. And typically I would ask you a bunch of other questions about mindset and what motivates you. But you're running for Congress. I don't get many people that are coming on the show to run for Congress. I had Matthew Deemer on, I have you on, and you're both Bitcoiners. So I got to dive into the Congress stuff. What the hell are you thinking, number one? Because I don't think I would ever want to run for Congress because of the scrutiny that you end up getting. But so tell us, how are you able to do this as a teacher? Where are you finding the time? And what motivated you? Why did you want to do this?
Yeah, so during the Democratic primary, I was canvassing for Andrew Yang, and I went all over the country to help him. And then when his campaign suspended, the pandemic hit, all these different things happened. I was like, you know what? I'm going to file. I'm going to just do it. I was thinking about it. My dad encouraged me to do it. And I think what it is you just get fed up with the lack of leadership. You just kind of get tired of people just talking and complaining and whining. And you're just like, you know what? I'll just do it. And, what's wild about our campaign, and I don't think people realize this, when I filed, it was in the thick of the pandemic. We're the beginning, not the thick, but getting to the thick of the pandemic. In the first 72 hours, we raised over $25,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And I think that was kind of okay, maybe we have a chance. Maybe we can really do this. And then when you start really talking to people in your community, you realize Brad's not very popular or really well liked.
Definitely not in the Bitcoin community.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can really unseat him. And so my desire to want to win, to fight for these policies is why I get up at 4:00 in the morning. I go to bed at midnight because I have this mentality of like whatever it takes. My dad, because I just mentioned he's a former UFC fighter. So, like their mentality is like you just go, no excuses, you do whatever you have to do. And I just feel like we can do better. And that's what keeps me going. And as tired as I am, the fact that our campaign keeps growing and growing and growing, and we're looking like we can really unseat him, that's motivating. That keeps you going. If I felt like we really wouldn't have a chance, I probably would rethink things, only because Brad has $3 million, but we are leading in more small dollar donations than him.
I wanted to ask you about that. So like my next question is actually about fundraising. You say you got $25,000 in the first. How much have you raised so far? That's incredible. You're jump we've raised today $188,000. That's great.
And we have like almost 90, like I'd say like 85% of it cash on hand. So we have been very conservative with our money. And what I think is so cool is that we have donations from all 50 states, America, Samoa, DC, and Puerto Rico. And Brad has never achieved that in his 20 plus years of serving in Congress. So we've already made history with that. And we're leading in small dollar donations. We don't take any big bank corporate PAC money, which everyone knows he gets all of his money from them. And I think the fact that we're funded really solely by people is why we're going to win. And the thing about fundraising is, yes, it's hard to keep annoying people asking them for money. But what I'm learning is people believe in our campaign, they believe in me and what we want to do in Congress so much that they're willing to keep contributing, which helps fuel our campaign. So we're going up. We're going up, and we're about to take this to the moon.
I hope you do. I saw that you tweeted at Jack Dorsey. He wanted to set up a meeting, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken. Did he respond back in any way, or his people? Have you gotten a meeting scheduled with him?
Yes, we did.
Wow, that's great. And have you met with him?
We haven't met officially yet, but it's in the works.
This is the test. You ready? If you could only ask him one question, if you could only ask Jack Dorsey one question, what would you ask him?
Will you help me raise $1 million?
There you go. That's the right answer. That is the right answer. You know exactly the right answer. There's nothing else you need to know from him, right? But this is a billionaire who supports Bitcoin. Clearly, you're supporting Bitcoin. We are supportive of you. Jack, come on.
And he also supports other things on my platform too. So I think for me, this is the cool thing about running for Congress, is that it pushes you out of your comfort zone. And you start to think of things that you would never think about. Like as an elementary school teacher, I've never even thought about $1 million before. You've accepted that you're just going to be paycheck to paycheck, right? But now I'm in this position where how do I raise $1 million? Brad has 3. How do I at least get 1? And so you just kind of have this fuck it, I'm going to go for it. And then you just go for it, and things like that happen. And so we'll see what happens. But you just go for it.
At the end of the day, your ideas are your ideas, right, that you have for your platform, but you need to get them out there so people hear them. You're doing a great job of that with the podcasting because the Bitcoiners are accepting you, and so you're getting your voice there, but you still need to advertise, right? You got to do some marketing, some signs. There's just things you need. You need the money. So great answer. Let's go back to Bitcoin. So how did you get introduced to Bitcoin? When were you first introduced? And let's start talking about Bitcoin. I want to learn your understanding of Bitcoin.
So you're going to really laugh at this. So I have a lot of young people on my team. And at the time, the kids when they started, they were in high school. And when we were meeting, they're like, Aarika, I think you should take Bitcoin donations. We all have it. We think this would be a great way to get young people inspired by your campaign. I was like, oh no, we're not going to do that. I don't know how that will work. Plus the financing, I don't know. So I kind of just they don't know what they're talking about. And then fast forward, Brad, I guess, has been going so extra hard lately about banning Bitcoin. And Dennis Porter tweeted at me. And one of the young kids was like, hey, I think you should respond to him. And so I was like, okay, well, let me look into Bitcoin more deeply. So I started to do my own personal research. And I'm thinking, well, why is he banning this? This is so ridiculous. This makes absolutely no sense. And I was like, yeah, this is not good. And so I responded to Dennis, and then it just blew up. And he organized a meeting with me and like 10 or 15 Bitcoiners from all walks of life. They sent me articles. I read the Bitcoin Standard, all these different things. I was like, this is great. This is like super cutting edge. I see why people are into it. And then I got Bitcoin.
And now it's going up.
I know. I was like looking at my cash app. I was like, this is exciting. But it's like, but it was just like, yeah, I can see this being the future. And as a young teacher, a science teacher that wants to be always on the right side of innovation, I was like, I'm absolutely going to add this to my platform. But the most important thing is for Brad and I debate about Bitcoin. Because, yeah. and for a number of reasons, this is important for a number of reasons. One, because I believe that he's unaware that a lot of our constituents have invested in Bitcoin. And yeah. I'm talking almost every person that I meet, I just kind of throw it out there just to kind of see their feelings. Oh yeah, I have Bitcoin. Wait, Brad wants to ban it. Oh my God. You know, and so I need him to be aware that this is a bad position for a district because you're supposed to represent us. Two, if I were to lose for whatever reason, I want him to consider changing his position. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Will I put up a fight for it? Absolutely. Because again, going back to my constituents, we own it. And so we can't have our representative trying to ban it or be affiliated. And so it's very important that we win our primary, which is why we need to fundraise. So when we get to the general, then he will absolutely debate.
You tweeted something out today. You said, yes, you could be a Democrat and like Bitcoin. In fact, it doesn't matter what your party affiliation is. I know a lot of people from all across the political spectrum that have it. Then you write, no, we have to stop making everything divisive. So let me ask you this though, as a libertarian leading independent myself, right? It kind of confuses me a little bit, right? Because how could you be a Democrat and still be for Bitcoin when the Democrats' policies are big government control, surveillance, and kind of like libertarian views or Bitcoin kind of views are kind of less government, less control, less surveillance. What are you going to do within the party? Like you said, you want to make him see the light. Like, what are you going to try to do within that party to try to be less government and less oversight and less control? Because that's not what I'm hearing from the Democrat side, you know?
I think that we need to modernize our government. I think we're so behind the times. Like I was even thinking this today, that when I was in 5th grade, I used a floppy disk. Now I teach 5th graders how to code and how to build, STEM projects using motors and all these different things, right? So we have to keep up with the time. And so an idea that I had to reconcile this is a Bitcoin caucus. What we saw with that amendment that happened was the lack of understanding and them voting on something that they didn't even know anything about. And that's not okay. And so I think if we had a Bitcoin caucus to educate people on why people are making this investment, I think that will help get progressives and moderate Democrats to change their position. Also, I know a lot of progressives and Democrats that have Bitcoin. So who cares? If people want to invest in it, let them invest in it. That's their free will. Who cares? And I think for me, out of all the things to be worried about in our country, trying to ban Bitcoin and blockchain technology just seems like would be like one of the lowest things I would ever even. It wouldn't even be something I think about putting my energy into in Congress. We have an increase in homelessness. We have kids aging out of the foster care with nothing. Our school systems are failing. All these other things that we can be focusing on. And so I think it could be honestly a way to bring people together because it is common ground. Like I've met so many people just helping Andrew that are like more right-leaning and have those conversations. But I also experienced the same thing with the Bitcoin community is that I've met a lot of people that are right-leaning or libertarian and we found common ground and we have these beautiful civil conversations. And a lot of them actually agree with me on foster care reform. And another thing that's being pitched out, and I did talk to to other influential people that are a part of Bitcoin about, why does UBI have to just be fiat? Why can't it be?
I was going to ask you about UBI. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's like, well, why can't it be in Bitcoin? Like, why not? Like, why does innovation have to be limited? I'm a person I'm very open-minded. And if you can rationally explain something to me and use fact and data, I'm willing to listen. I don't just shut down an idea. Like I'm very, very open. And so I think that there's a place for a universal basic income if people take the time to really understand what it is and what it could do and how it can change how, like, a social safety net, it really is where capitalism doesn't start at zero. And then also look at Bitcoin and see, like, what can we do with this in the future? Like, how can we elevate it? How can this all happen where because to me, we have to really address poverty. That's very important to me, and that's why I like it.
I think the interesting thing about the poverty is it's opportunities and choices, right? The challenge is you want everybody to have equal opportunity, and they don't, and that's the problem we have in this country is the opportunity. But even when they have equal opportunity, whoever these people are in the world, right? They have to make the right decisions and make choices as well. Yes. A lot of the Bitcoin community, like I said, is libertarian kind of leaning, and they're not very supportive of UBI because if you really think about Bitcoin in general and like what it stands for, it's actually, just look at the opposite. What fiat stands for is it's a big Ponzi scheme, right? The US dollar is basic Ponzi scheme, right? They just keep printing more money, and they keep feeding from the bottom, right? And kind of, well, actually, they probably feed it from the top, right? But the crony capitalism that we have. But the reality is that it's not sustainable unless it just keeps going forever. I don't know, I guess. But we think it's eventually going to crash, right? The way this is. So with UBI, in a fiat system, it makes sense. You print money, you give it out to people. But we saw it happen last year. It wasn't so great either. A lot of people aren't going back to work.
But we can't confuse the two. It's not just giving people. It's not just giving. If we're gonna be surfacey, yeah, it looks like, oh, we're just giving people money. But we have to look at the data and the numbers. We have 75% of people living paycheck to paycheck. Yep. We have an increase in homelessness. We have all these different things that are, and when we talk about people experiencing homelessness, we have to acknowledge that a lot of these people came from our foster care system. That's why I'm so passionate about it. But it's where capitalism doesn't start at zero. You can invest it however you want. And it's a different way of looking at a social safety net. I think that if we get rid of our current welfare system, right, the one that we have in place where we know that there's a lot of fraudulent, we know that people, keep it, but they won't work. We know that the data is there. It's not really saying this. And we just give the money to people and let them do what they feel is best for them, because my situation is not going to be yours or whatnot. I think it will pull people out of poverty, and every UBI trial has shown that time and time and time again.
I guess fundamentally, though, the thing is, where does the money come from? And in a world with Bitcoin, it's a finite amount. 21 million Bitcoin will ever be created, 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis, right? Like you can't create more of it to just give to people. It's impossible. So in a fiat world, you have to keep printing money to be able to give out the money, right? Obviously, you could take it from people and give to others through taxation. That's another way.
So if we did a VAT tax,
right,
and then we altered some of our other programs, we would be able to afford a universal basic income. And so remember, we're moving.
So are you for some austerity and like reduce some spending and try to redirect the spending? Is it?
So I'm gonna be very candid with you. When I first ran for Congress, we literally looked at the federal budget.
Yeah.
And we went through the whole entire federal budget to figure out how could we pay for a universal basic income. So I want people to understand, I'm not just like, oh, just print all this money and not be mindful of the deficit like that. I don't think like that. I really cared about that. That's something very important, because we have to make sure that we're mindful of inflation and all these different things.
Yeah.
But I think people are not realizing, like, just let's look at the child tax credit. It is projected to reduce child poverty by 45%. Because parents were able to get $300 extra a month. And that's going to reduce child poverty by almost half. So clearly, giving people money is more effective than maybe government like programs like food stamps or whatnot like that. You get what I'm saying? Maybe we have to just rethink the system. That's just basically the point of it. And maybe it's not $1,000. Maybe it's $500, because we know that most people fall into financial ruin at $500, that $500 unexpected bill. So maybe it's not 1,000, but maybe it's 500. So we can ensure every person has the potential to live in dignity. And how about this? Let's say you get $500. Well, if you choose to invest it in Bitcoin, go for it, right? Like you could do with it whatever you want, because that's what people did with the cash relief. They were able to do with it whatever they want.
Yes, they bought stocks in Bitcoin. There was a big article about that I read last year.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Nothing. That was smart. If you didn't need it for food, you should invest it.
But I never saw anyone give it back. I ran over a nail, so I had to get a new tire. but that was what I was able to do. And another thing I want to point out when it comes to UBI, for someone like me, and I'm being a little personal here, that is a single woman, I'm 36, I'm single, no children. If I had a universal basic income, let's say I'm not in Congress and I'm just a school teacher with my current salary, one of the reasons why I supported Andrew, because I was thinking, you know, I can adopt because that's extra money a month for me to be able to take care of a child. I could not afford to take care of a child as a single mother. And I'm not the only woman that has, like, I've met other women, single women, that have said the same thing. And so I think we have to get out of this mindset of like, oh, people are just going to do drugs and people are going to do this. That's not true. There are a lot of people that really do go to work and do the best that they can. And the reason why a lot of people aren't going to work is because of the unemployment, that $300 extension that was given. So what ended up happening was people were getting more money.
You got penalized to go back to work, basically. Right.
Right. So we have to really look at the numbers and be fair when we say that.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, like, I get money, which is absolutely ludicrous. They airdrop me money into my bank account, the IRS, I guess it's the IRS or the Treasury. Somebody's doing it, right? And it's like a few $100s every month because we have 4 kids. And it's like, I don't need any money from the government. I don't know why they're giving me money. So like the way they do these policies, they're blanketed, I guess, in some way. And it works for some people and it helps some people it should. Probably more money should be going to some people then, because they're giving people like me that don't need any of the money. It's just crazy. They gave everybody money, basically, you know?
But a couple of things about that. One, like when we look at means testing, so basically you're saying if you should only get it if you make, let's say, $60,000 a year or $30,000 a year, right? It's like you put at a cap.
Right.
Well, just to go through means testing, what people don't understand is the administrative costs and all that stuff to do all that costs millions and millions and millions of dollars. So you might as well just go ahead and give it to everyone. And two,
it's fake anyway.
it's conservative. It's actually a conservative idea. They did in Alaska where they get an oil dividend every month or every year. They get like a check, you know, an oil dividend.
Yeah.
And people really like it. And then also too, I think if everyone gets it, it kind of like, okay, we're all American. We all get it because you have to be a United States citizen to get it from 18 to the day you die. And everyone gets it. No one's better than it's kind of like everyone just gets it. It's something that you get as an American citizen.
I mean, this is essentially the Andrew Yang idea that we're moving into, which is universal basic. Everybody gets some amount of money, essentially, right? That was his platform.
The same amount.
Right. Yeah. So it's basically everybody has a basic needs, necessities paid for of some sort. And then the rest of it, you got to go and have some ambition and work for the rest of it, because it's not enough to make you get by. It's just a little bit.
Yeah, and we should want people to be ambitious.
Yeah, you want to be motivated still.
Right, and if you have $500, that's not enough to live on.
No.
Like, and you know what? And if you choose to live in an apartment with 10 other people because you don't want to work, then why do you care?
Right.
Like, why do I care? Like, if that's what you choose to do, I'm certainly not going to do that. A lot of people are not going to do that. So if that's what someone wants to do, that's the free will piece of it. Like, you do with it what you want to do. And so it keeps that sense of freedom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let me go back to the Bitcoin. You said you read the Bitcoin Standard. You've done some research. You talked to Dennis and some others. I'm guessing probably CJ and some other guys, right? So the people that you've spoken to and you've learned about Bitcoin, to you, what is the most important property or attribute of Bitcoin? What is the number one thing that you find the most interesting about Bitcoin?
I think before someone invests in Bitcoin, they should understand financial literacy.
Understand money.
Yeah, understand money, why Bitcoin has evolved in the way it has. I think knowing the background of it, I was actually blown away by like just the birth of Bitcoin. Yeah. And in the Bitcoin Center, the way that they really walk it back of the history of money. I thought that was I think that's very, very, very important. So I would say that. And I think what I like about Bitcoin too is it's not just even the Bitcoin, but more of like the Bitcoin community is this sense of innovation that I find to be quite fascinating, like the blockchain technology and how so Bitcoin gets a bad rap for the environment, but I think that the Bitcoin community has been inspired to try to find ways to be cutting edge when it comes to the mining aspect of it. And I'm very interested to see how it evolves technologically over time. And just to see one of my really good friends, she bought in Bitcoin like early on, and it pulled her out of poverty. And I tell this story because she was a veteran. She came back, she fell into poverty. She's like, she took a chance. She invested in Bitcoin. It pulled her out of poverty. And when she showed me her wallet, I wanted to die on the sidewalk. I was like, oh my God, that is crazy. And she's like, Aarika, how do you think I bought the diapers for your diaper drive? And so every time we do the community drive, she always contributes every single time because she can afford to do it because she made a lot of money off Bitcoin.
That's awesome. I think that's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
What is your position on the infrastructure bill that recently, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. So on the recent infrastructure bill, they kind of put some stuff in there around Bitcoin and surveillance and stuff. I'm just curious what your position is on that. I mean, I obviously think I know, but I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I publicly spoke out against the legislation. I thought that the language was wrong. I tweeted out about it multiple times. I was kind of cringing that I was agreeing with Ted Cruz.
A lot of us
really
are.
Cringing. but I'm about fairness. So he was right. Like on that point. Just in case people could take a clip. So I just thought that was irresponsible. And what I don't like people to do is slip in things like no one's going to notice.
Yep.
I don't like that. And actually, you're a libertarian, so you might appreciate this. Justin Amash actually introduced the Readable Legislation Act, which makes policies more legible and readable for lawmakers. And it actually inspired me to go back and look through the bill in which he introduced, because I was thinking, well, maybe if I'm elected, I'll reintroduce that bill because clearly they like to slip in things.
Oh, yeah.
So that really inspired me. But in regard to the infrastructure bill, yes, we need infrastructure. It's a bipartisan bill. It's unfortunate that with having the super majority that they can't get it done. And, it just goes to show for me on a deeper level, the dysfunction in Washington, why we need term limits, why we need campaign finance reform, why we need new people, because it is really painful to watch. And I'm sure the leadership in the Democratic Party is just so frustrated.
So you got Gensler, right, out there in support of Bitcoin, it seems. He was an MIT professor, spoke about Bitcoin in a very positive way. He's had some recent comments over the last 6 months or so that I've heard. More recently, over the last few weeks, he was actually just doing an interview, and had some good comments, it seemed, on Bitcoin. He calls what we call the shit coins. He called all the altcoins, for the most part, all the alternative currencies, cryptocurrencies, I should say, they're unregulated securities for the most part, he says. And Bitcoin is not. He considers it more of a commodity. And it's really not, there's no company behind it, so there's nothing they can do anyway. Right? So he's not going after Bitcoin, but he probably is going to go after all these shit coins, right? Where do you stand on this? How far have you dug into that to understand the difference between like Doge and Ethereum versus the Bitcoin? And like, what is your view on what Gensler and the SEC has been saying?
So I am still, like I told you earlier on, I'm still learning about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology. So I have really, when I have free time to read and educate myself, it's usually around Bitcoin specifically. I haven't really looked at the other coins. I probably should.
There's nothing to look at.
I just because I've been so, I find myself when I'm reading about Bitcoin that I'm onto another article and another article. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, it's, and so, because I really, if I'm going to be in this position where I can have a say legislatively, then I really want to know what I'm talking about. And I want to be able to represent the Bitcoin community in an authentic way and do the right thing. And so that is why I love the Bitcoin community, because anytime I have questions, I can ask a variety of people. And what they do, which is impressive to me, they send articles. And it's and from multiple authors. So it's not just like, and then now I'll go and look too. So to answer your question, no, I have not really looked deeply at the other currencies. I watch a couple of just crypto in general, but not. I've been really focused on Bitcoin.
You should be focused on Bitcoin. I mean, all the other ones basically are trying to copy Bitcoin. They're trying to get that that fast growth in the beginning of a stock or a company or a business, and that's not what these are. But but they're trying to get that 0 to 1,000% gain very quickly, because they think they'll have less gains moving forward in Bitcoin in terms of like the percentages over a period of time, right? there's no top to Bitcoin because there's no bottom, as Max Kaiser says, to the fiat money, right? So it's just going to keep growing over time and suck in the asset values over time. But yeah, I mean, the alternative coins, there's really nothing there. But that brings me to the other question I have, which is if you've seen there a lot of companies like BlockFi and some others, they have these lending products that you can like kind of stake your coins and all these different Ethereum type of coins and stuff like that, and you can earn interest on it, which I guess the government is coming down on them now for being unregistered securities. Have you learned much about that and what they're talking about with that?
No, I haven't. What is that called?
So essentially, it's really the SEC that's cracking down on any alternative coins and or any business, if there's a brokerage, that gives you an interest rate on your cryptocurrency, right? They're saying that that's an unregistered security. So I just didn't know if you were aware of it. But if not,
Yeah, I have not. I haven't,
sure, of
yeah.
course. So Aarika, I want to hear beyond Bitcoin, what else is in the platform that you stand for, that you really are supportive of? If you could just tell us about your entire platform that and the other positions that you have.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I mentioned this a couple of times, but I really am for education reform, financial literacy to be taught in schools, life skill courses, advocating for trade schools. I don't think every kid needs to go to college. I think that is actually even to me. I just don't even know if that's even practical for the future. I had a kid today in my class literally talk about an invention that they wanted to patent. And so I think kids today are more entrepreneurial now than ever before. So I really want us to revamp our education system, and I want to serve on the Education and Labor Committee in Congress. So my own unique signature policies are my kids have a Voice 2 program, which I want more elected officials to adapt, which basically says that when you are an elected official, that you represent the young people as well, and you make them a priority in your district. And that means showing up to their events, having town halls with them, going to their schools, letting them intern for you, all these different things. I think it's really important that we get young people understanding how government works, the importance of voting, the three branches, all of that stuff, because it will benefit us all if they're informed. Because we know that older voters always come out and they determine the outcome of an election. So we really want to inspire young people to get actively involved in the legislative, in the governmental, in the election process, so they can have some more influence over political outcomes. Another one for me that I just want to plug, because I think I just, a lot of people don't ask it, but I think it's important. I'm a big advocate for animal rights. One that's unique to me is the Rome Act. My cat died because of malpractice at a veterinarian clinic, and it's a long story, but I do want people to care about that. And then I know that's not like the sexiest thing to say, but I just think it's important. And then campaign finance, absolutely. I think we need ranked choice voting. I think we need democracy dollars. I understand the Bitcoin community hates that idea, but if you had democracy dollars, it really would help a candidate like me going up against a 20+ year incumbent. So basically the way democracy dollars works is that everybody gets $100 to contribute to their political candidate of their choice. And then that's the money that's used to campaign. And that forces candidates to actually go out there and be in their community. So you can't get drowned out because, this big bank wants to give the incumbent, $500,000 or $50,000 or whatever. And so it gives someone like me that really genuinely wants to serve a real honest chance. And so with ranked choice voting is now we're not voting between the worst of the two evils, which we all experience election after election after election.
One thing I wish you would fight for, I wish everybody would fight for. I sold my business like 6 years ago, and I used to have a group plan for health insurance. I pay an individual payer plan now. I pay the top plan I can pay. And unfortunately, I can't get the coverage that my friends who have regular jobs can get because I'm an individual payer. Like, that's something they got to fix. It just seems crazy.
Yeah, so I know it's not, I have to be honest. Like we have so many failed systems, and so when it's talking about someone's life, if we're gonna have a single payer healthcare system, which we should, every developed country has one. We do need to make sure that the system is properly in place to ensure that people don't die because the system sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, death panel stuff. Yeah, totally. I got to ask you a last question. What is your 10-year Bitcoin price prediction? 10 years from now, I'm going to look back at this. I'm going to say, Aarika said what? What's your price?
I don't know. I don't have a prediction.
The max is unlimited. It's all good. Okay. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I know you got to hop in like 10 minutes, so I want to let you go now. Everybody, Aarika Rhodes running for U.S. Congress in California, 30th District. Thanks, Aarika.